Anthony Todd Boyd spent 30 years on death row, his life hanging by a thread as appeals dragged on. The most chilling detail of his crime? He allegedly helped duct tape a man's feet before watching him burn alive, flames licking the night sky over a $200 drug debt. But to grasp how he ended up there, we have to rewind to the quiet streets of Anniston, Alabama, where a young boy's world began to shape a troubled path. Hit that like button and subscribe to be part of our growing community. Also, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from as we dive into this chilling story. Born around 1972 in Alabama, likely in the Anniston area where he grew up, Anthony Todd Boyd entered a world far from easy. Details of his earliest years are scarce, but what we know paints a picture of a modest life in a working-class town in north-central Alabama, about an hour from Birmingham. Anniston, with its mix of rural charm and industrial edges, was home to Boyd and his family. The area was known for its NASCAR racetrack and national forest, but beneath that, it held pockets of hardship, economic struggles, limited opportunities, and a community where drugs and petty crimes sometimes filled the gaps for young people searching for a way out. Boyd's family life centered around his mother and younger brother, Maurice. No records mention a father figure, suggesting he may have been absent, leaving Boyd's mother to hold things together on her own. In a small home in Anniston, the brothers shared a close bond that would later become a lifeline during Boyd's darkest times. Maurice, born about a decade after Anthony, looked up to his big brother as more than just family. He was a mentor, a coach, and a friend. Anthony took on responsibilities early, stepping into a protective role that showed glimpses of his caring side. He'd coach Maurice in basketball, drilling him on fundamentals after school. Homework sessions turned into brotherly rituals, with Anthony guiding his little sibling through math problems or reading assignments. On better days, they'd escape the routine with trips to the movies or even splurges like a day at Six Flags, creating memories that Maurice would cling to years later. But even in these warm moments, hints of trouble loomed. Anniston wasn't immune to the challenges facing many southern towns in the 1970s and 1980s. Poverty rates were high, jobs scarce, and the crack cocaine epidemic was beginning to sweep through communities like this one. While there's no direct evidence of extreme poverty or abuse in Boyd's household, the environment around him was ripe for pitfalls. By his late teens, Boyd had already brushed up against the law. Court records note that he had problems with the police before the 1993 crime, though specifics are thin. What we do know is he lacked a significant criminal record, no major convictions that would flag him as a hardened offender. Instead, his involvement seemed to stem from the streets, dabbling in drugs, perhaps selling or using in a town where cocaine was becoming a quick, dangerous hustle. Education details are equally sparse, with no records of high school achievements or dropout stories. It's possible Boyd attended local schools in Talladega County, but any formal learning took a back seat as he navigated adolescence. By age 21, he was already entangled in Anniston's underworld, associating with people like Sean Ingram and Marcel Ackles, names that would later haunt him. This wasn't a sudden fall. It built from small choices in a place where options were limited. A young man without strong guidance, surrounded by temptation. What might have started as minor run-ins escalated into something far more serious. Yet, those who knew him saw potential. He was described in court as a positive community influence, compassionate toward family, and even a good father to his own child, born sometime before his arrest. These early years forged a complex man, one capable of kindness, like the big brother who made time for amusement parks, but also vulnerable to the pull of the streets. Did the absence of a father plant seeds of resentment? Or was it the grind of small-town life that pushed him toward drugs? We can't say for sure, but these factors whisper of influences that steered him wrong without defining him entirely. As Boyd hit his early 20s, the choices piled up, leading to that fateful night in 1993. What happened next would shatter families and spark decades of debate over justice and innocence. But was the boy from Anniston truly destined for this? Or was it a tragic detour waiting to unfold? In the humid summer haze of Anniston, Alabama, tensions simmered over a small but deadly debt. Gregory Huguley, a 32-year-old man known on the streets as New York, had scored some cocaine on credit from a group including Anthony Todd Boyd, Sean Ingram, and Marcel Ackles just days earlier. but he hadn't paid up the $200 he owed, sparking a hunt that would end in unimaginable horror. As July 31st, 1993, unfolded, a typical Saturday in this working-class town, the men grew impatient, cruising the streets in a rented blue Astro van, determined to track him down. They picked up a fourth man, Keentwee Cox, who handed over a Mac 11 automatic pistol for extra muscle. What started as a search for repayment was about to spiral into a nightmare no one could forget. The timeline ticked forward into early evening, around 7:30 p.m., as dusk began to settle over 15th Street, where folks were hanging out. That's when the group spotted Huguley. In a flash, Ingram leaped out, brandished the gun, grabbed him, and shoved him into the van's floor by the first bench seat. Huguley, terrified and helpless, was now trapped with his abductors. Cox was dropped off nearby at Cooper Homes with instructions to tail them in his own car. The van made a quick stop at a gas station, where Ackles bought gasoline in a plastic jug, innocent enough on its own, but a chilling clue to what lay ahead. They drove south about 20 minutes to a remote baseball field in the Munford community of Talladega County, arriving between 7:45 and 8 p.m., just as the sun dipped below the horizon at 7:46 p.m. The crime scene was eerily ordinary, an oak-shaded spot by the ball fields where families might watch games on better days. But that night, it became a place of pure agony. As the group pulled up, Boyd and Ingram forced Huguley to stay down on the van's floor during the ride, his pleas echoing in the confined space. "Don't kill me. I'll get your money." Once there, Ingram ordered him onto a wooden bench. Ackles wrapped duct tape around Huguley's hands and mouth, silencing his desperate cries. Boyd taped his feet, binding him tight to the bench like a prisoner with no escape. Then came the unthinkable. Ingram poured gasoline over Huguley, trailed a line of fuel a couple feet away, and struck a match. Flames erupted, engulfing the man as he writhed in torment. The group stood watching for 10 to 15 minutes, the fire crackling in the growing dark, until Huguley rolled a few feet away and the blaze died out. He was still alive when the fire started, inhaling smoke and soot into his lungs, his body charred beyond recognition. No gunshots, just the slow, torturous burn that left traces of tape on his skin and a red plastic gas cap nearby. This wasn't quick mercy. It was a heinous act of cruelty, turning a simple debt into a family-shattering loss. Huguley, a flawed but living soul with dreams and loved ones, suffered needless terror and pain, his final moments a blur of fire and fear that scarred everyone touched by the story. How could a $200 quarrel lead to such brutality? And what secrets might the crowded ball field, buzzing with hundreds that evening, still hold? With the flames extinguished and Huguley lifeless under the tree, the men didn't linger. Boyd and Ingram hopped back into the van and drove straight to Anniston, blending into the night. Cox and Ackles followed in the car, arriving around 7:45 to 8 p.m., with Ackles muttering an ominous warning. "We're all in this together. If one goes down, we all go down." The body lay undiscovered until the next afternoon, August 1st, when a local man named William Mosley stumbled upon it around 3:40 p.m. while checking the field for a softball game. It was still fresh, a grim testament to the previous night's savagery. But freedom didn't last long for the suspects. By September 1993, police pieced together witness accounts of the abduction, the van, and the drug debt threats. As the police knocked on his door in September 1993, Anthony Todd Boyd walked out calmly, reassuring his family he'd be back soon. He was innocent, after all. His initial alibi seemed straightforward. On that hot July 31st evening, when Gregory Huguley met his gruesome end, Boyd insisted he was at a lively birthday party in Anniston, laughing and hanging out with friends, before heading to a nearby motel to spend the night with his girlfriend. It wasn't just his word. Several people could vouch for seeing him there, far from the remote baseball field where the horror unfolded. But in a case built on shaky testimonies and no hard evidence, would this defense hold up or crumble under pressure? Interrogations kicked off soon after his arrest, but details remained sparse. Boyd cooperated voluntarily at first, sticking to his story without cracking. Prosecutors dangled a plea deal, life without parole if he'd testify against his co-defendants. He turned it down flat, confident a jury would see his innocence. Meanwhile, The pressure cooker heated up for others. Co-defendant Quinty Cox, facing the electric chair, initially balked at a deal but flipped after a judge's stark warning about execution, agreeing to spill details in exchange for a lighter sentence. The trial exploded into action in mid-March 1995 in Talladega County, lasting just 3 intense days that would decide Boyd's fate. Prosecutor Robert Rumsey opened with a bang, painting Boyd as an equal accomplice under Alabama's felony murder law. Even if he didn't strike the match, helping with the kidnapping made him just as guilty. It's like a bank robbery, Rumsey argued. The getaway driver gets the same rap. No fingerprints, no DNA, no smoking gun tied Boyd to the scene. Just words from witnesses whose stories didn't match. Times varied from dusk dark to full night. Some saw a gun, others didn't. One claimed Boyd bragged about a shooting that never happened. The star? Quinty Cox, who flipped his tail from staying in the van to full participation after his plea. Under cross, he admitted changing details to avoid blowing the deal. Defense hammered these flips, spotlighting no tape on the legs and a crowded ball field where hundreds might have seen something. But only one witness was called to say that. Boyd's team pleaded his youth, no prior record, and alibi witnesses who placed him at the party, but the rushed prep showed missing experts, untapped leads. In the penalty phase, Boyd's little brother Maurice took the stand, tears flowing as he begged for mercy, describing how Anthony coached him in basketball, helped with homework, and treated him to movies and theme parks. "He's my big brother," Maurice said. "Don't take him away." The courtroom hung heavy with emotion, but would it sway the scales? After deliberating, the jury delivered a guilty verdict for capital murder during a kidnapping in March 1995. That same day, they voted 10-2, a non-unanimous split allowed in Alabama, to recommend death. The judge, finding the crime especially heinous, atrocious, or cruel, and noting just one mitigator, no significant criminal history, sentenced Boyd to death by electrocution shortly after, overriding any lingering doubts. But the story didn't end there. His friends faced their own reckonings. Sean Ingram, seen as the ringleader who lit the fire, was tried in May 1995 and also sentenced to death. Marcel Ackles got life without parole for his role in the taping and driving. Quinty Cox, the snitch, snagged a plea for a parole-eligible murder charge and walked free in 2009. Why the disparities? And did Boyd's weak defense doom him from the start, leaving Innocence claims echoing in appeals for decades? Behind the cold steel bars of Alabama's death row, Anthony Todd Boyd spent over 3 decades reflecting on a life that had veered tragically off course. Convicted at age 23, he entered the William C. Holman Correctional Facility in Atmore, a maximum security prison often called hell on earth by those inside. With its sweltering heat, constant noise from clanging doors and shouts, and the ever-present shadow of executions. Holman houses about 150 death row inmates in single cells, each roughly 5 by 9 feet, with a bunk, toilet, and sink. Days blend into one another under fluorescent lights that buzz 24/7, broken only by the rattle of meal trays slid through slots or the occasional yard time in caged outdoor pens. For Boyd, this became his world, a place where hope flickered like a weak bulb, dimmed by the weight of his crimes and the system's unyielding grip. But did years in this isolation change him or harden his resolve? Boyd's behavior on death row stood out as steady and productive, far from the violent image painted at trial. He worked as a barber, cutting hair for fellow inmates and guards, a role that required trust and calm in a tense environment. Guards described him as respectful and cooperative, with no major disciplinary issues over 30 years, a rarity in such a high-stress unit. He took classes in anger management and conflict resolution, showing an effort to grow despite his circumstances. Interactions with others revealed a quieter side. He formed bonds with inmates through shared stories or games like chess during limited rec time, and he stayed close to family, especially his brother Maurice, who visited regularly. Maurice spoke of Boyd's encouragement from behind bars, urging him to stay strong and avoid the streets. As for remorse, Boyd has consistently maintained his innocence, insisting he wasn't at the scene and expressing sorrow for the victim's family without admitting guilt. "I'm
A
an
for
innocent
death row
man,"
inmate-run
he said in
organization
recent pleas,
that's looking to end
focusing on the
executions
tragedy
in Alabama
without personal
and
confession.
nationwide.
Religion
I think
played a
that's
role too.
who he
He
always
found
was,
solace in faith,
taking care.
attending chapel services when
Taking
allowed,
care
and reading
of
the
those who
Bible,
need it.
which helped
Boyd
him
is
cope
less than
with
a
the
month away
isolation.
from his scheduled
Yet, the crime's
execution by
horror lingered. Huguley's brutal death haunted the prison's whispers, a reminder that redemption, if possible, came at a heavy cost. What hidden regrets might he carry in those long, silent nights? Appeals became Boyd's lifeline, a relentless fight against what he called a flawed conviction. From 1995 onward, he filed multiple challenges, highlighting ineffective counsel, conflicting testimonies, and no physical evidence linking him. Courts denied most, including a 2023 U.S. Supreme Court rejection, but doubts persisted. Groups like the Equal Justice Initiative argued his trial was unfair, with a non-unanimous jury and coerced witnesses. Boyd spent days poring over legal papers in his cell, writing letters to lawyers and supporters, claiming he was a changed man focused on justice. The process dragged on, each denial a gut punch in the oppressive heat of Holman, where the smell of bleach and despair hung thick. Still, he held out hope, even begging to meet Governor Kay Ivey in his final weeks to prove his innocence. As execution neared, the weight pressed harder. Was this the end of a guilty man's road, or an innocent one's unjust tragedy? As the clock ticked toward October 23, 2025, Boyd's final hours unfolded in the stark routine of Holman's Death Watch cells, a segregated area where condemned inmates spend their last days under constant surveillance. The morning likely began early, around 5 a.m., with a standard breakfast of eggs, toast, and coffee, as guards monitored every move. He might have spent time in prayer or quiet reflection, perhaps writing final letters to family or reviewing his case one last time. Visitors could include spiritual advisors, lawyers, and loved ones like Maurice, sharing hugs through barriers and tearful goodbyes, the air heavy with unspoken fears. Since Boyd has not been executed as of today, details of his last meal remain unknown, but speculation based on Alabama traditions suggests he might request comfort food from his southern roots, something like fried chicken, collard greens, cornbread, and pecan pie, eaten around noon in his cell. In the afternoon, preparations intensify, a final shower, donning a white jumpsuit, and meetings with the warden. Around evening, he's escorted to the execution chamber, a small room with a gurney and viewing windows for witnesses, including victims' families seeking closure. Strapped down, a mask delivers pure nitrogen gas, causing hypoxia, death by oxygen deprivation, typically within minutes, but criticized for potential suffering. His last words? Unconfirmed yet, but given his pleas, he might proclaim innocence one last time, like, "I'm innocent. Tell my family I love them," before the gas flows around 6 p.m., pronounced dead shortly after. The moment hangs solemn, a culmination of pain for all sides, where justice and loss collide in silence. In the end, Anthony Todd Boyd's story leaves us grappling with the shadows of doubt and the finality of death. Was this a fitting close to a heinous crime, or does the lack of evidence point to a system that failed? What do you think? Did justice prevail, or should non-unanimous juries and eyewitness-only convictions be reevaluated? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if this hooked you, hit like and subscribe for more deep dives into true crime tales.